Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Thirsty for Theory Thursday. As we continue our series on the theory tree, we have some more theories for you today, and we again have an excellent, esteemed panel with us today. Let me introduce you all to who's here. We have Daywalker, BB, Obi-Wan, Lily, Zoe, Christy, and Sammy. So today, we're going to talk about a bunch of theories, and the first one we're going to talk about is from my friend Daywalker, who mentioned a theory to me the other day that just made me go, I never thought of that before. So Daywalker, can you start us off?
Okay, yeah. No, it's a theory about Tom Pierce, and it's not really about Tom Pierce, I guess you can say. It's just kind of a theory that I had for if Teresa.
Well, who is Tom Pierce? That's my favorite question. Who is Tom Pierce?
That's the Teresa's boss at Auto Trader.
Excellent. He also owns the photography studio
not
as
Auto
well,
Trader.
Right?
Not Auto Trader.
Oh, not Auto Trader? Okay, sorry.
He's her business partner in the photography
business. Yeah.
He owns the photography business, yeah.
Well, what I was thinking about the other day was if Teresa, in fact, told him that October 31st was her last day at Auto Trader, would she had said anything to Steven about that it's, this is my last day, the next person that comes here will not be me, so I just want to let you know that. It'd be kind of like if you were doing some type of, BB and I talked about this, like Avon type Mary Kay sales. If you were to end your tenure at a place that you were selling at, you would tell them that this is the last time I'm selling to you, or going to be over here, and somebody else will take my place. Was anything like that ever said to Steven? Did anybody know about that? That's what I was thinking about.
That is definitely a theory that made me go, you're right, because according to Steven's own testimony, I shouldn't say testimony, I should say his recorded interview on the 9th when he was arrested, he tells everybody that Teresa had been there the teen number of times in the past few months, a large number of times. And we know from the record, Steven's own admission, that some of those times that she was there were for a so-called hustle shots. Does anybody want to tell us what a hustle shot is? Do you know what a hustle shot is, Daywalker?
Well, to my knowledge, it's like a impromptu picture that is taken of something very, almost like a quick. I don't know how else to say it. It's just an impromptu picture that's taken, like you say, flag them down, say, hey, can you take a picture of this car?
And the reason that Teresa made several hustle shots for Steven. My understanding is that the hustle shot does not actually go through Auto Trader. Steven had Teresa's cell phone number. He didn't make that a secret. He'd call her up personally and say, hey, can you come down for a hustle shot? He was aware of what her route was and when he would be in the vicinity of the salvage yard, and say, hey, can you come down? And when he did it like that, she actually made more money on that kind of a hustle shot than she would doing it through Auto Trader. And if indeed that was her last day for Auto Trader, you can kind of see her saying, well, I've had a couple of hustle shots with you, but it's not going to be me anymore. So don't bother calling me on my cell phone, not in a bad way, but let's giving them the heads up that it's not going to be her anymore. Doesn't that make sense? And mightn't she have said the same thing to any of the people that she saw that day? That to me would be the sensible thing to do as she was making the round. And it's only Tom Pierce, it seems, and this is why I link it to Tom Pierce. It's only Tom Pierce that we seem to be able to corroborate this story from. As a matter of fact, we also happen to know that with regard to her day planner, that Kathleen Zellner has done some investigation. This same investigation that sort of implicated Ryan Hillegas, but she is writing down appointments for Thursday for people. That would be an odd thing to do in your day planner if if your last day at Auto Trader was gonna be that Monday, why wouldn't she tell this person who she's making the appointment with? Yeah, it's not going to be me who does it. So, you're going to have to call Auto Trader and make this appointment, rather than say I'm going to put you down for Thursday and just hope that the person who shows up from Auto Trader, who they're probably going to have to hire, by the way, right? Because they don't have her waiting in the wings, or him waiting in the wings, whoever it may be, to come on Thursday. There's no guarantee they're going to have anybody to show up on Thursday if this is Teresa's last day. How does any of this make any sense? Does anybody have a comment on that?
Well, yes, it actually makes sense. If you look at Teresa's phone, I don't know what the exact, not necessarily an application she did with her phone, but she did put on her no-call forwarding on October 31st at some point in time during that day, which, all calls will be led to her voicemail. That just kind of leads in the theory that, she was a part of this. There was something there. She was actually kind of possibly in on it, saying that she was quitting October 31st. This is her last shoot. And she's forwarding all of her calls to her voicemail, which is, they say her voicemail's filled up very quickly, I guess, and then, Hillegas and Hallback might, break into it.
Yeah.
But
I'm not 100% sure that's what she did, but she certainly did that for the 241 call. Yeah.
Well, and she wouldn't be telling other people if it was supposed to be a secret.
If I may,
please, yeah, Obi, go ahead.
She seems like a professional person. She seems like she definitely takes her job seriously, and it would only be courteous to plan ahead and make sure that he knows this information prior to just bailing, leaving him in the dark.
Can I say something here, Doug?
Something she would do.
Let's say,
Obi, when you say, hold on a second, Sammy. Obi, when you say leave him in the dark, are you talking about Pierce? Are you talking about Auto Trader? Who's the he in your?
Everyone. I mean,
Steven.
it would only be courteous to tell everybody about what she plans on doing, even Stephen Avery himself.
Minimally Auto Trader, right? Her employer, who's going to have to have somebody to send out on Tuesday. There was no indication at the trial that Auto Trader was aware of this knowledge, that she was leaving, and that they had hired somebody to fill her spot, right? I mean, I agree with you 100% that she minimally seems extremely conscientious, right? She's writing down her appointments very diligently in her day planner.
Right. Normally, people give like a 2-week notice before something like that, so they would have known in advance.
Right. So why does only Tom Pierce seem to be aware of this, which is very strange. You had a comment, Sammy? Sorry about that.
well, it sort of just seems like if there's a bigger plan going on, she's not wanting other people to know. And the fact that Pierce is the only one person that actually does know, and thank God he told someone. Otherwise, we would think no one knew. Tells you she was aware that would be her last day, and that just speaks to other possibilities and implicates him at the same time in that plan.
Well,
Yeah.
Pierce also
ahead,
is
Dee.
in the early stages of dementia. So he might have forgot that he wasn't supposed to say.
Is that true? He has dementia? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he has
Yeah,
Alzheimer's.
that's
He's
true.
got Alzheimer's. He's in the early stages. I think someplace at trial he brings that up.
Wow. Okay. So I can tell you for sure that I've listened to the Millbilly's dispatch calls, and please subscribe to his channel. There's a wealth of information on his channel. Like and subscribe. The dispatch calls, one of the many pieces of audio that he has on his channel, have a former intern who worked with Teresa for Tom Pierce, saying, this guy Pierce, who I worked for, had a tremendous temper. And to me, that's suspicious. Maybe you should take a look at him as a potential reason why Teresa disappeared. Now, in
Well,
my
and with
mind,
Alzheimer's,
go
they
ahead.
start getting violent, right?
They
That's
can.
one of
They
the-
they very much can. Some people
Yeah.
go into the state of
Yeah.
passivity, and some people get really mean and violent. On what I was saying before, it's one thing if you don't like your boss, and you want to kind of give him a little jab. It's a far cry from not liking your boss to actually picking up the phone, dialing the phone, talking to the police, and say he might be responsible for murder. Right, there is a far cry between those two things, between a jilted employee and a murder accusation, and that to me is, of course, do you think that was investigated? I certainly doubt it. The Casso report and Tom Pierce's interview seems to last about a half a page from what I recall. But he did have another interview later on, BB, as I remember, that you were telling me about.
Yes, on WEAU. There was I don't know, maybe it was a 10-year, 12-year anniversary of the disappearance of Teresa. He was interviewed, and it's a really creepy. He has just this real creepy vibe to him. And the interview covers like his business. It shows the pictures on the wall. There's still a picture of Teresa on the wall.
So his business is still open.
It was, yeah.
At the time. So his dementia couldn't have been very aggressive. I know I'm not trying to make light of that disease, but
Right.
A lot of people don't last 10 years, especially employed with dementia.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one
But
wonders
he
if
came
that
off
wasn't some kind of
really creepy in that interview. I have looked for that interview even immediately after I seen it, because I watched it directly on the news here. But I looked for it. I have not been able to find it.
Yeah. So what I really like about this theory is the way that Daywalker came up with it. If she's really leaving, if you tell somebody, wouldn't she have told other people? And that of course she would have. And that's just something that I feel like I should have thought of myself. And when I hear theories like that, and we can begin to discuss what are the implications of this statement? Well, to me, it points right back to the person who gave us that piece of information in the first place, Tom Pierce, and that's how the sort of a collaborative thinking experience kind of evolved. So, I'd like to thank Daywalker for having the common sense to bring it up to everybody. Anyone else want to have a comment on Tom Pierce? Excellent. Well, why don't we move on? Christy.
George Zipperer. I like George Zipperer.
Who is George?
Where do I start? George Zipperer. He's one of the appointments when Teresa's first reported missing and the investigation starts. There's a call to Auto Trader, and Auto Trader verifies that she had 3 appointments. One with a man with the last name of Sipple, Stephen Avery, and George Zipperer. Originally, it's thought that she was at Zipperer's last before everybody decides that she went to Stephen's last. When the police try to make contact with Zipperer, right from the get-go, he's pretty drunk. He's pretty belligerent. He denies she was ever there. He also says that he wants Auto Trader arrested for trespassing. Something about the dog would eat somebody. The cops are just really kind of perplexed at his response to this. They go about their business. They go at him again. He lies about his age. He lies about his last name. He spells it completely differently for them. There is a recording on his voicemail, which a lot of people believe that the recording that making a murderer correct me if I'm wrong, because some of these things get confusing. The audio on Making a Murderer that they portray as the Dassey recording, or that happened at the Yonda house, that voicemail message that we hear Teresa saying, "I'm not sure where I'm going." A lot of people suspect that's actually the recording from the Zippers, which the police
Right,
supposedly conveniently lost. There's some mix-ups with these
Yeah. Well,
answering
I
machine
would say that
recordings.
more than just Making a Murderer, that's the audio. They play that audio at trial, claiming that's
Yes,
the audio from Barb's answering machine. It's
correct.
not just the Making a Murder trying to fool 20 million people. That's
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
right. Yeah, I should have been more specific. Yes. The police label this answering machine message as being the one from the Yonda answering machine, which a lot of people do
Right.
not believe and think it's actually the Zipperer one, because Avery Road, she's been to Avery Road, as you said, over a dozen times. She wouldn't call about Avery Road. You
That's
know,
right.
the Averys live on Avery Road. It's not like Avery Road is a subdivision and there's 100 houses to choose from. You know,
Yeah.
she had a pretty good idea that, and the address was written on the call sheet. The address was
Yeah.
on. So I really don't
Even
believe she
though
was looking for Yonda's address. She was
yeah.
looking for the Zipperer address.
Right. She might have been confused by Beyonda, although I think that he had put cars in there for her before. But there's no way she was
Yes.
going to get confused by the address, Avery Road.
Right, Avery Road. I mean, it wasn't Main Street. It was Avery Road. Who lives on Avery Road? The Averys.
Well, if she was in doubt, she could have showed up at the office and they would have pointed her to where she was supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's
I
a
just
business
don't.
office running there. Yeah.
Yes, I don't
Yeah.
believe that. I don't believe that the voicemail that they play was the one left on the on the Yonda Dassey, whatever.
So if I could add one thing in there for the viewers, the listeners, Christy, is that the disappearance of the Zipperer voicemail, which one of the cops recorded on his cell phone supposedly, and it has been lost to history, is one of Kathleen Zellner's Brady violations that she brings up in the in her recent filing, indicating that maybe the time on this message was potentially exculpatory to Stephen, and if the cops can lose any piece of information they so desire, that's just not right. So the time on that message would have made it clear that Zippers was her last stop. So sorry to interrupt there, but that's that's recent news. So
Oh yeah,
please
no,
continue.
we don't really know where she went last. I mean, they say it was Stephen's house. It really could have been Zippers, I believe. It doesn't make much sense, but it could have been.
But
At some point,
Wiegert has a phone call with Remacher, right? You can hear this on the 20 million viewers fooled show. Wiegert and Remacher have a phone call that says, "Well, what do you think happened?" And they think, at least at that time, that she went to Zipper's last, right?
correct. They in the beginning of the investigation, she went to Zipper's house last. I'm not sure what made them change their minds. I do know that Zipper's wife eventually confirms that yes, Teresa came, that Teresa did leave a message, and that she was outside working in the garden or the yard or something and missed the call, but that the girl did come. The car actually belonged to Jason Zipperer, who is George Zipper's grandson. Which that
So
took
when
a
you say
bit
the
of
car, you're talking about the car that Teresa was photographing for Auto
correct.
Trader.
Correct. It was a 77 Firebird that she was looking for, and Mrs. Zipperer actually had to give her some directions to go down around the corner where the car was actually sitting, because the car wasn't even technically like right on the Zipperer property, I believe. So Teresa actually had to leave, go take a picture, and come back. So she actually entered the Zipperer property twice.
Kind of what I understand is that he had it parked where it was in view of a well-traveled road. But to get to that well-traveled road from the Zipper's front door, you had to walk kind of through the woods to get there, right?
Something like that.
Something
yes.
like that,
And
yeah.
there was a neighbor that was contacted to verify that the car was parked there, but she never saw anybody come take pictures of it or anything. She couldn't verify a Teresa sighting, but she did verify that Jason Zipperer's 77 Pontiac Firebird was parked at that location at that time. George Zipperer and Jason Zipperer gave alibis. George Zipperer's alibi was that he was at work all day. Jason Zipperer's alibi was that he was at school. Jason
How
Zipper,
old was Jason Zipper?
he was a senior, so I think 17, 18,
Yeah.
19. I can't really
Okay, yeah,
remember.
yeah.
They all blend together, but he was a
18,
senior at the
19.
high
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
Right. He was a senior at the high school. It was verified that he was at school on October 31st, 2005. But because everybody's related around there, the school resource officer is actually a relative of Detective Jacobs, Officer Jacobs. I'm not sure what Jacobs is, but the school resource officer is related to
Right.
Jacobs. So, in my opinion, at this point, we can't take what is said by Jacobs as verifying Jason Zipper
So-
being at school as
So if we can
concrete, in
stop
my
there.
opinion.
So just, I mean, you always, when they get one of these cases, your theme ought to be remember the names. Right?
Yeah.
Isn't Jacobs the guy who said, "Don't we have Stephen Avery in custody"?
I believe
Isn't
so.
that the same Jacobs, right? So
I
we,
believe.
yeah. Do we
So
have
the
him in
school
custody
resource-
yet? How's
Yeah,
that?
the school resource officer is a relative. I cannot, for the life of me, off the top of my head, remember the relation, but they are related. I can't remember if it's cousin or brother, but they are related. George Zipper's alibi is, I was at work all day. George Zipper's alibi doesn't get confirmed for a year and a half. It was February of, so this happens in October, November of 2005. And his alibi is not checked, verified, looked into, anything that we know of until February of 2007, just days before Stephen's trial.
Well, they had the
How
right guy.
do
Why
you-
would they look?
Yeah, how do you verify an alibi a year and a half later? So they go to two people, and the first person says, I have no idea where George Zipper was on October 31st. I can't help you. The second person says, well, I don't really remember October 31st, but if the weather was good, then he was here. What is that's it.
That's
That's how you verify an alibi.
Right.
The
right.
other, there's a few more interesting things about Zipper. In 2017, his grandson, did commit suicide. He shot himself, was on life support, and died 2 weeks later. They took him off of life support. And at some point in between Teresa's disappearance, murder, whatever, and Jason Zipper's suicide, the garage is completely ripped down and replaced. So there's a lot of speculation that something happened in the garage. George Zipper tore down the garage and rebuilt a new one because George
So
Zipper
why
owns
that-
his own construction
Why
company.
that time frame? What's suspicious about that time frame that would cause, if you're going to burn down the garage, why not burn it down in 2008? What happens in 2017 that
Well,
that
we
makes them think
we
they
we don't know when the garage was replaced. I don't think anybody's been able to verify it. We only know through Google Earth images that the garage
Oh,
has
I
been
see.
replaced. The garage
Ah,
in a 2015 December 2015 Google image, the garage has been replaced. The
Okay.
significance of the garage being replaced could be that something happened there. I find some significance with Jason Zipper's suicide only because the end of 2017, all of 2017, Kathleen Zellner's making a lot of noise.
well,
Was she
that's
getting
why
close?
I thought
was she
that was
getting
what we were
close?
going to go to first. I mean, this woman, Skinny and Kathleen Zellner, start sniffing around, and all of a sudden we lose the garage. She luminols the Dassey garage. I'm sure that that fact couldn't have been lost on people. That
Right.
She's got all this right to start doing stuff, and people go, "Whoa, hello."
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
it
it's
does
time-
appear
time
that
to have a little fun.
it does appear the garage was replaced before making a murder, but we don't know when. So that would be before Kathleen and Zellner's involvement. I just think the suicide and Kathleen Zellner's involvement kind of coincide. I don't know
Yeah.
obviously we don't know the reasons. We don't know. It's speculation. It's theory. It's just somebody who should have been looked at a little bit more. A relative of Jacobs verifying Jason Zipper's whereabouts, and the half-ass verification of George Zipper's alibi it causes us to ask questions.
Yeah.
And the
Well,
last picture of the old garage, it appeared perfectly fine from exterior photo.
Correct. We don't know that a tree didn't fall on it though, or that it was
Right,
leaking.
yeah.
We don't know.
We
It
don't
could be
know.
all completely innocent. It could be all completely unrelated. But at this point in this case, with everything that doesn't add up, You have to look at everything. And here we are 14 years
It's a
later
lead.
doing Wisconsin's job for them. Is what we're doing.
Could have been completely nefarious. You never know.
It could have been.
Could have been innocent. Could have been nefarious. So one thing that as we were discussing the podcast prior to the to recording it, we were talking about how meticulously and accurately the CASO is regarding Jason Zipper. Do you have any comments on that, Christy?
Everywhere in CASO, it says that Jason is George Zipper's grandson. Or I'm sorry, it says that Jason is George's son. Jason is actually George's grandson. Why is something like that so difficult to, it should be right. Jason Zipper was George Zipper's grandson, not his son. I believe that he's actually the son of a daughter that lived there. Because at one point, the police call a phone number that they have for George Zipper, and a woman answers. The whole family is elusive. Because when they call this phone number, the woman goes, nope, don't know no George Zipper, no George Zipper here, have a nice day. Come to find out, that's George Zipper's daughter's phone. Why is she what do you have to hide? If you,
Right.
Even if there's no involvement in Teresa Hallback's murder or disappearance, what do you have to hide? Why are you lying? George Zipper even lies and tells the police that he doesn't know where George Zipper even says son. He doesn't know where his son is. He heard he's going to Alaska to go to work. He's a high school student. Why are you making up bogus stories?
Going to Alaska.
What is the point? What is the point? He even lies about his name. The cops ask him to spell his name, and I have it here somewhere. We can all spell Zipper, right? And he spells it some crazy way. He doesn't even, it's
He
like
sounds like
Z-I.
the Joker.
Yeah, and that's what he says. Like, he's laughing about this. He even admits at one point, yeah, I was giving him wrong information. Like, he thinks it's funny. This is a missing person. At this point, it's a missing person. At some point, it becomes, they decide she's a murdered girl. Why are you still joking? And why are the cops okay with him joking? Why are they not doing that? He's impeding an investigation. I believe that what George Zipper did from minute one was impede an investigation. Why is he not held accountable for that? Welcome
They
to
had their
Wisconsin.
guy.
What most comes to mind for me is the sentence belligerent old drunk.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's backed up in the CASO because we know that Coburn goes to interview Stephen on the 3rd, right, after the call, and he actually regroups at the church that's right across the street from Zipper's house with Link and Remaker. Is it Remaker? I can't remember. For sure, Link and somebody else, because I think they're a little bit nervous about going to Zipper's house, alone because he was so belligerent and obviously so drunk. They want to go there with multiple people just in case there's an incident, but they feel the need to talk to him. So that's kind of backs up the belligerent drunk story.
He keeps describing his dog as like Manitowoc's very own Cujo. My dog is eaten from the feet, starting with the feet. I mean, I wouldn't go there either.
It's nice that he knows the dog's a dining app. So.
Well, there's another thing about the phone call, the answering machine message. Isn't it somewhere that the cops actually play it on the answering machine and record it on their phone or record it on their recording device?
Yeah.
That's right, the phone. Somebody records it on their cell phone, and that's where they lose it from because Joanne Zipper deletes it after that. Now that they have.
And the recording that they do have is a very clear sounding phone call. I mean,
right. I know what you're saying. If they had truly recorded it the way they said they did, you would have some. I know what you're saying.
Does anybody else have any comments about the Zippers? Well, one thing that strikes me is we were talking about Alzheimer's with regard to Tom Pierce. I also happen to recall that Joe Ellen Zipper had some pretty bad Alzheimer's as well. Does anybody else recall that from the time? Well, maybe it's
I
just me.
don't know that. I don't know that, but his behavior sure sounds like he could.
When I say
He's
Joellen,
saying
that's
her.
the wife. The wife,
Yeah.
yeah. It was actually
It sounds familiar, but I don't remember where I heard it.
Yeah, it was actually very difficult because she's one of the people that confirms Teresa's time of arrival. Just what you want, confirming the time of arrival, an Alzheimer's patient, right? And
Right,
they
yeah.
actually, well, maybe it was getting dark, kind of remember one thing, what was going on because she was out in the garden all day. So she, in my mind, is not a very reliable witness to actually establish Teresa's time of arrival. And that's one thing that struck me about the case. And I think I read that on the George Zipper blog spot, which is a good resource that you can find. That's not just about the zippers; it's about a lot of things to do with the case. So that's a great spot to go look if you're looking for certain information. Anything else on the zippers anybody wants to bring up before we move on?
Just that they found somebody with Alzheimer's better than George to come to court and testify. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on. Obi-Wan.
I'm going to go with Josh Redan.
Who is Josh Redan? Is it Redan? Redant? I'm going to say Redant, so I apologize if that's how I say it. You could very well be right. That's just my New England accent kicking in.
Josh Redan is the owner and operator of the Rannoch Quarry, and he also happens to own the deer camp.
So what is it that makes you suspicious about Mr. Redant?
Well, the part of the investigation was basically secluded in secrecy of the deer camp. Not only were Teresa's bones supposedly found on Avery's property, they were also found on the quarry and the gravel pit. I think it's important because the focal point of Cuss Road and the deer camp was a big thing.
Yeah, I think so. We know for sure that there was not enough fuel from the fire perspective to be able to burn a body at Stevens burn pit. And we know that insufficient skeletal remains were found across all the places that they were found to account for her, for her burning. So therefore, Kathleen Zellner certainly is one to argue that, that Stevens was not the primary burn site. And if it wasn't Stevens and it was Josh's property, then doesn't that make him a viable suspect?
Yeah, it does. They also found, I wouldn't say found, cadaver dogs had hit on several locations on the deer camp and Redant's property, which was the barrels, the back stoop of that red trailer that was on the deer camp is conveniently missing right now.
Yeah. Yeah, there's those barrels. There's a lot of funny business that went on with those barrels. There's a good friend of the Foul Play channel named Moving On 04. She's been very ill. She actually made an appearance not too long ago, though, and I hope she gets a lot better. I hope she's listening to us and is interested by what we have to say. But she did an excellent sort of expose on these barrels, and there's a lot of people who think that the bringing the collection of the barrels back at the Madison Crime Lab, and oh, by the way, Ken Kratz all of a sudden decides that one of these barrels needs to go back to the Avery property. What? For what? For what reason does it need to go back? How come?
When's that happen?
Yeah. So, what date does that happen? Is that your question?
I I'm not really sure what day that was.
Oh
That
no,
was
I was asking BB. I was asking BB. But yeah, those you appropriately point out those barrels as being super suspicious, right? We don't know what was in
Yeah.
those barrels.
We don't even
yeah.
know for sure how many barrels they went through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or which
Yep.
one belonged to where. Everything
Ironically,
seems
in
to
one
be
of the phone
confused.
calls, they do say that they didn't go through Chuck's burn barrel.
What else you got
You know,
about Josh?
I think I don't know. In 2000, I think was it 2016 that Josh Verdant said that he was told by the Department of Justice that they believed Teresa's Hallbox vehicle was driven through Cuss Road cul-de-sac and passed through the deer camp until reaching an intersection with gravel road that ran northeast of Avery's property. Now, I'm wondering when this incident had occurred. Did it actually
yeah.
occur back then at the trial? Because it just seems a little odd to me.
Well, yeah. So that's a great point. Let's expound upon that a little bit because I do know a little bit about that. So for
Isn't
people
that
who are
Conveyor
listening,
Road?
yeah, for the people who are listening, one of the places where that statement that Obi-Wan just talked about, it can be found, is in Kathleen Zellner's latest filing. And she lists that as a Brady violation for the prosecution. Why is that a Brady violation? Because Verdant signs an affidavit that says the police, the law enforcement, including the DCI, because most of the interviews that were conducted by a police officer accompanied by an FBI or DCI agent. And Verdant claimed in his affidavit to Zellner that exactly what Obi just said, which is that they know, how they're always falsely claiming that they know everything anyway, that they know that the RAV was delivered to the Avery salvage yard via the deer camp and Conveyor Road, as BB just said. So Zellner's complaint is, well, what evidence do they have that led them to that conclusion? And that's Zellner's Brady violation not being supplied, but that piece of evidence which led them to that. Additionally, they say the same thing to Stephen in his November 9th interview, or right after he's arrested in November 9th, right in the prison. We know the car was driven up through the deer camp to get into the back. Well, how do they know? And certainly Ken Kratz doesn't tell that story at trial, does he? He tells a much different story. So that's sort of the background on that statement. So that's corroborated a couple of times from both Verdant via affidavit, and you can hear it for yourself in Stephen's prison interview.
Yeah, it makes you wonder why it wasn't relayed at the trial.
Yeah.
Well, and
They had-
Millbilly pointed out the other day too that the dogs hit on a spot on the berm, which is where Josh had been getting rid of that brush.
Cutting that brush cutting that brush down in the first place. Yep. For Stephen to burn later. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, that's very very, very suspicious. For many of you, if you want to go back and read Kathleen Zellner's original motion for post-conviction relief, I don't believe that she could name suspects by name in that place, and she had she called them either person A, person B, person C, or suspect A, B, C, something like that. One of those suspects was Josh Verdant, and she does not at least not that she's in a position to do it, but exonerate Josh, at least in her own mind, until after she gets to talk to him in making murder. So she was suspicious to him. And he and his lawyer. Yeah. I would want my lawyer too if Kathleen Zellner showed up too, even if she was just coming over for coffee, because she's a pretty scary lawyer.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sorry to take that off on a long tangent, Obi, on you, but that was the context for that statement that Verdant makes. So yeah, thank you for that.
Do they know what Redan claims that law enforcement didn't search the deer camp November 4th through the 6th. And,
I did not know that, but certainly they did, right?
Wasn't it the 7th and the 8th?
Yes.
Wow.
Or was it the 7th
Eh,
and the 8th?
I believe it was the 7th and the 8th. And also, Redant was allowed through the roadblock. They said, let him through. They want to talk to him when he comes back.
He signs into the property multiple times, which is one of the things that I was that I knew we were going to get to under this topic. Why is he so interested in getting onto the property?
He basically claims that he was on the property because they wanted to ask him about the fire that he witnessed. They wanted to basically get a statement, is what he said.
Yeah,
On the
he's on the
31st,
property longer
yeah.
than that.
He says
We
on the
also have to
31st.
keep in mind, all around on all four sides of the Avery property is owned by Badgerland, Badger Aggregates, something along that line.
Yep.
Aggregate, Badger
And
aggregate.
Redant is either owner or part owner. He's like neck deep in with the owning of the property.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they trying to push the Avery because they want to set up wind
Wind farms.
wind farms.
Yep.
You know, hey, another thing.
That's
There's
extremely
also for people
valuable.
who know how to use Google Earth. There's also like wind maps. So they obviously were doing some kind of the wind currents across that area. And there are
Yeah,
all
there's
the
a lot of that.
pieces. There are all them pieces on the Manitowoc gravel pit for windmills.
Yep.
Yeah. they
Yeah,
have stats.
and I mean, and notionally at a a quarry, they're obviously pulling valuable things out of the ground at a quarry, right? That's the whole reason why you have a quarry in the first place.
Mineral rights.
Wisconsin is a pretty mineral-rich state, right? If it stands to reason that if there's a property that literally abuts you and you're pulling valuable stuff out of the ground in the property that you're at, there's going to be valuable stuff in the ground in the property right next door, right? So there would be motivation for wanting to buy the Averys out, helping some chaos, prevent some chaos there. Anything
Yeah,
else, Obi?
Yeah, another thing that had me kind of puzzled here is that he claims that there was a small fire going on the 31st that was basically contained in a 55-gallon drum. And that kind of coincides with Taddock's original statement, but then they both, I believe, change it into a large fire. And Ellie basically tries to get them to change their statements.
Right, he admits that to Kathleen Zellner, doesn't he? That he was clearly being pressured to say that fire was bigger than it was.
And then they were trying to put it behind the garage there.
Yeah. So one thing that's interesting about that statement in general is where he said that he was when he saw that fire. Right. We know all the shenanigans that go on Cuss Road and Deer Camp. And Redant, by seeing that fire where he was, and that fire had to be, we know that fire that he saw could not have been in Stevens burn barrel, because Stevens burn barrel was on the other side of his house from that. That fire had to have been in one of the Yonda burn barrels.
Right.
So he's putting himself in view of that. He's putting in the vicinity of all this shenanigans place, the Cuss Road, Deer Camp, on the 31st, where we know, where we suspect something might have happened to Teresa in the first place. So that another thing that raises the subject on just his presence in that spot on the 31st.
Well, according to Chuck's interview on the 9th, he was being, I believe it was O'Neill that was speaking with him. He told O'Neill that there was no fire on the 31st, and that he actually put a fire on Avery's property on the 2nd, but it was in a burning barrel. Another thing I kind of question is why didn't they use Josh Rodant's testimony at trial? They didn't even use him. He was there as a witness, but for some reason they obviously didn't want to use him for a reason. I believe that they knew that they would end up getting caught up somehow had they used his testimony.
Well, or maybe he had an expensive enough lawyer to where they could keep him out of it.
What do you think that reason might be?
I think he might have even told the truth. He would have told the truth. I don't think he would have lied. Knowing that law enforcement tried to get him to change his statements around, I think it would end up backfiring against him.
We know he was friends with Chucky, right? Chucky calls him from Crivets.
Yes.
Anybody else? Anything else on Rodant? I mean, he was right there. So
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, keep going.
If it was him, you know what I mean, and the cadaver dogs are up there following a scent, it's on his property. If he's walking around and he has Teresa's body or remains, bones, whatever have you, and he's walking around planting stuff or carrying her body, that it would fit that cadaver dogs would be following this scent to a burning barrel, to the brush, to the deer camp on that trailer of the stoop of the trailer. And but you know what I mean, you don't ever hear of or see that these cadaver dogs hit on Avery's burn pit. You know, it's just odd. And another thing is it could be law enforcement. If law enforcement discovered their remains on Rodant's property there, they could have picked it up, relocated it, and that is why those scent dogs are actually following a certain trail.
Yeah,
Well,
that's right.
and
Go ahead.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the scent and cadaver dogs hit more on Rodant's property than they ever do Avery's.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure true. They did not hit in Stephen's house. They didn't hit in the burn pit. But they hit on the conveyor belt. They hit on the rock pile in the quarry. They hit on the Route 4.
And there's as many groupings of bones found on Rodant's property, because there's two, as there is on Steve's, on the Avery's.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. So Rodant has an employee named Travis Grohl. Anybody know who Travis Grohl is? Zellner claims to have an affidavit from Travis. It didn't rise to the level of inclusion in a recent submission, but she said this name, I think, in one of her tweet sessions that she had. And Travis, who is an employee of Josh Rodant, claims to have smelled a very foul smell in the area of the quarry on the 2nd or the 3rd. I can't remember exactly which day. Again, one of the big mysteries about Teresa being burned in Stephen's burn pit is, where was the smell? You know, people who are firefighters or perhaps medical professionals that have treated burn victims know that when humans are burned to that extent, there's just an awful, terrible smell. Travis claims is the only one in all of Manitowoc to claims to have smelled the foul smell. I guess there's one other person. We can come back to him, but he does not claim to have smelt it on the 31st. He claims to have smelt it on a different day. And I find that very interesting. Not that this is necessarily a Rodant topic. He's a Rodant employee, and he's actually good friends, from what I understand, with Rodant. So he wouldn't necessarily say anything that would implicate his friend slash boss in that murder. But I find that to be very interesting. That there's really, two people that I could think of role in this person with the cows, who even say that they smelled something foul, and only one of them says it's not on the 31st. So
I just want to
ahead.
mention something here. Everybody hears about an awful foul smell as far as body burning. And when I was younger, I caught on fire. It was to describe to you, the smell is sickening, sweet smell that literally will turn your stomach and make you vomit. That's the description, the best description I could give. That it's unmistakable. If somebody had a fire anywhere near you, that you would probably walk up and ask them what the bleep they were burning, because it is that, it's just the most sickening, sweet smell you could ever smell, to the point of it will turn your stomach. That's all I wanted to say, because we always hear, oh, it's just an awful smell.
I
Yeah,
know I
I'd
burnt
lo-
my
go
finger
ahead.
really bad one time, and my mother referred to it. She said, "Why do I smell burning chicken feathers?"
Ugh,
And then I
yuck.
touched my finger, and then I started screaming.
Wow. Yeah, so smells like that, they have this way of lingering. You know what I mean? The smoke blows and gets on wood and everything else, and you can't excise that smell right away because it lingers in the dirt. It lingers everywhere. So it's just hard for me to believe that even after a good rainstorm, that that place is gonna, wherever that body was really burned, is gonna be fully cleansed of that awful smell. So, but that's a little bit deviating from Radon, but certainly he's Radon's employee. Yeah. Anyone else? Obi, were you done with Radon? I'm sorry I cut you off there.
Yes, I'm good.
Okay. Do we have anyone else on today's podcast? I think that's sort of the end of the people we have on, right? Thanks everybody for joining us on Thirsty for Theory Thursdays. We hope to see you next week. This has been a Foul Play production.